Welcome back, everyone, to this next episode of our first season of The Next Question. Today we're going to talk about what at its simplest might seem only relevant to a narrow audience within the industry, but in reality I think touches us all, and that is marketing. Now, certainly responsibility for an overall organization's brand strategy only lies with a select few, but marketing teams in many ways are just mirrors to the culture and capability of a wider organization, and just as much as they help define a message that every employee carries with them in various forms, both internally and externally. And that's before we touch in any form on the personal responsibility we all have, especially in this age of managing our own personal brand. So as we look at the impacts of AI, a tool with this incredible capability to help any and all of us to create high quality content, to allow us to understand audiences and personalize messaging, to even automate the workflows to create and deliver that content, I think there is relevance and lesson to be learned in today's discussion for all of us. So today I'm joined by two longtime industry friends and peers who sit at the front lines of building brand stories, both longtime members of the industry who are navigating the challenges and opportunities of the AI-driven age in the marketing realm on the front lines. So I'm excited to welcome today Rachel Bradshaw from Caster Communications and Oegger from Shure to the discussion. So perhaps let's get a bit of context from both of you on your roles and backgrounds before we dive into some of the topics. Rachel, perhaps you first. Probably a familiar name to some from your days working for Infocom and ultimately Avixa. But tell us a bit about your diverse career journey, I guess, and roles to get to today, and a bit about Caster and I guess the wide brand base that you support as an organization and so on, and ultimately in your role these days.
Sure, Byron. Thanks so much for having me. Probably a lot of people in the AV world know me from my 12 years that I spent at Avixa working primarily on the Infocom trade show and the education conference and other content at the show, which built a lot of wonderful friendships and relationships with people in the industry and a broad understanding and deep roots in pro AV. But 5 years ago, I jumped over to Caster Communications, which is a boutique tech PR agency that works in the PR industry or in the pro AV industry a lot, but is also pretty broad based in our tech clients. So we have a lot of clients in the smart home space, a lot of clients in the pro AV space, clients in the technology standards and embedded technology space, and even you're going to have to keep me under control this conversation, because we also have clients who are directly in the AI space in some pretty deep infrastructural ways, like building photonics technology to help data centers run more efficiently in order to handle AI workloads, things like that. So it has really expanded my horizons dramatically, and sometimes makes me hard to keep on a single lane. So good luck.
Excellent. Well, looking forward to it. Ava, over to you. Certainly, I guess, with the rare milestone of having reached 100 years in the market. Shure's a brand that few probably need introduction to, but introduce us a bit to your role and perhaps in particular what excites me in bringing you on today, that the truly global lens, I guess, that your journey to today offers us as we try and make sure that we don't just get caught in that sort of US-centric black hole sometimes that the AI discussion tends to drive us towards.
Yeah, that is right. So from the 100 years that Shure has been around, I've had the pleasure of being with the company for 11 years. And I did join in Asia. I'm based in Asia at the moment, but I am in a global capacity. And my job specifically is to lead Shure's collaboration and conferencing category. And that's really interesting because it does touch, as a category lead, I touch all the aspects of marketing. I'm sort of involved with our solution product messaging, and there's a lot of talk about AI in that. There is all the content programs that we have, and obviously we are using AI for that as well, down to obviously the digital experience, making sure the customers actually understand who we are and what we do and their journey across everything. So yeah, it's a very exciting role to be in, and there is a lot of things going on. So I'm very much looking forward to the conversation today and exploring some of those areas where perhaps other listeners here can learn from one way or another.
Yeah, no, look, I think particularly in that space within Shure's trying to reinvent itself from a microphone company with 100 years of tenure into stepping into these new sort of spaces that you are of being at the center of the collaboration technology infrastructure in a room and so on. It must be exciting times to be getting to be part of a reinvention amid a broader reinvention of the way marketing works and so on in an AI age. So, well, look, why don't we start perhaps with some of those personal journeys? So, Rachel, a month or so ago when we were chatting about you doing this podcast, you mentioned something to the effect of that the AI discourse often swings between delusion and denial, I think was sort of some of the concept at least. And I guess my sense would be that's not just across looking at a spectrum of people, but I think we face that even internally in our own minds, and that's part of the struggle of the moment. But where's your head today in your own personal as much as organizational journey around AI? Obviously, Eva, as you were saying, it touches everything that we're doing. I mean, I consistently refer back to this sort of concept of AI as like electricity. It's not the answer in itself. It's just the enabler, and it touches almost anything and everything that we do. But so share perhaps a little bit of your AI journey at this point, where your head's at in that delusion to denial reality, and I guess what's exciting you and motivating you.
Sure. I try to be aware of that spectrum and steer towards the middle, although I will say that I am tempted towards both the accelerationist and the doomer sides from time to time. I think it's important to remember, though, in this whole conversation about like how AI connects to marketing, that AI companies are constantly marketing to you. And when you hear messages about the transformational potential of AI, that is marketing. But also when you hear messages about the potential for AI to destroy society, replace all of your jobs, and make it so that human beings will have to rethink their sense of purpose in life, that is also marketing. Right? Both of those are messages about the power of AI to change our lives. And it is important to look specifically at, okay, but what are we actually really doing right now? So that's kind of where my head is at these days. OpenAI shared some interesting data earlier this month about how people are using their platform. And I don't know if you guys looked at this, but it was surprising to me. They said that 70%, and I mean, look, this is one platform, but it is kind of the biggest one, so I think it's indicative. 70% of queries on AI or on ChatGPT are non-work related. People are doing a lot of asking for romantic advice or asking for like gift giving advice, things like that. They're using it as a personal assistant or using it as a search tool, which is something that we might talk about a little bit later. And for people who are using it as a work aid, the way that they're using it is interesting to me. And I think that this might have bearing on our conversation a little bit later, but the use case has been much more incremental and much more scoped than I think a lot of people realize. Like for all of the worry that is in the ether about AI replacing jobs or replacing humans, the way that most organizations who are using it in an enterprise fashion are finding value from it is really in a support role. With humans still very much in the driver's seat. And I think keeping that fact front of mind helps you be an AI rationalist as opposed to either an accelerationist or a doomer, which to me is a good place to be.
Love that middle ground, which is usually the case, right? It's that half full or half empty, while the reality is you're sitting somewhere in the middle and so on. And look, I think the other thing that I love about some of that comment is we are in control of our own destiny to some degree, and that's a part of this imperative to lead in the moment as well, and not just let things pass you by. That we all have an ability to step up and decide what direction some of this goes in. But I love some of that I think I saw some of the similar feedback from GPT, and also actually I just posted on NEXXT, our community platform, some data from I think it was Perplexity, or actually about Claude, I guess in terms of some of the shift between automation and just direct chat and so on. So lots of shifts going on in that space that I think are really interesting to track and monitor. But Eva, perhaps you're thinking where is your head at in terms of your personal journey and what AI is meaning to you, and in that spectrum, I guess, from one end to the other.
I've just been finding it interesting, the whole evolution. I mean, with any new technology that's coming up, right? There's always this hype cycle, and when ChatGPT came out and everyone started racing and, oh my God, everything's possible, the future is now, we can do whatever we want. And then there's this trough of disillusionment where you just realize that it doesn't actually fix everything. And as Rachel was saying as well, companies are now figuring out how they can actually use it and where it delivers the most benefit, where it actually supports. And we've been finding too that, I guess in our company as well, from an operational standpoint, from how we work day to day, it's just a tool. It's a tool to become more efficient, to work better. It's a tool to get more out of the humans that you have in your organization. It's never going to replace that brain power, that creativity, that innovation that comes from the people in your company. It just facilitates that, and I think that's just a most important thing to keep in mind as well on this journey.
Yeah, and I think there was a comment that you made, which perhaps connects a little bit to this, that we know data is a foundation to quality AI and so on, but you were talking about the realities of a 100-year-old company and 100 years of data that hasn't necessarily been curated. It's been far easier in the past to just let piles of data pile up because it was cheaper to do that than it was to actually spend the time to clean it up and so on. And yet here we are in this moment where we've got to clean the data for it to be relevant. But I just thought there was an interesting practical story, and maybe you can sort of elaborate a bit more on that of some of the real journey of how you've been looking at applying it and offering that support role, I guess, to the humans in the organization.
Yeah, and I will say, obviously, there's very few companies that are over 100 years old, so Shure is definitely in a very sort of unique position there as well, with just this century of data that we're working with. But yeah, when it comes to some actual applications that we're looking at, I mean, obviously, we're all about customer support. We want to help our end users get the most out of whatever tools they're using to communicate. And just as a practical example is an answer database. A lot of people come to our technical support team for questions of how do I fix that, or I have got this problem, what do I do about it? And all of this knowledge exists in our company, in the various databases that we have. But what we're finding is, okay, how do we actually connect all of this data in a way that we can maybe serve it through a chatbot? Where, yes, we want to be more efficient. We want to help customers self-serve. We want, especially with AI, with people using AI to find answers quickly. Well, in order for tools like ChatGPT to get you the right answer, it's for it to be able to access the data that exists. So that's a journey that we are on at the moment as well, is making sure that all this information, this wealth of information that exists, making sure it's connected and it's accessible for those AI tools that exist. And I think that's at least one piece of advice or an action item that I could encourage people to look at is, okay, look at the data, the knowledge bases that you have in your businesses, how they're structured, and being able to actually talk then to these interfaces to get that information out.
I smile when we have marketing people talking about sort of service and support models, because traditionally those silos were pretty separate. But Rachel, as we were talking before, you were talking about sort of this premise of going into organizations and this new sort of reality of how we build brand and so on, being able to extract the stories of the internal organization out and make that part of a brand story. I think you talked about a campaign that probably would have taken 6 or 8 weeks from a global level, from someone that didn't necessarily speak English as a first language and so on. So talk to me a little bit about that story perhaps, but what AI is doing to enable a different foundation of approach to telling marketing story, to extracting story out of the organization and building that future confidence as opposed to necessarily the black box of today.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is we're starting to get into sort of some direct marketing applications for AI here. And I think that one of its really powerful use cases is as an inclusion enabler. So we work at Castor, I mentioned before, with some standards-based organizations where we're working like directly with engineers whose job it is to like write foundational protocols for open standards. It's very technical stuff. And as you say, Byron, like maybe some of them don't speak English as a first language. It's a global organization, but maybe conferences that we're applying to or papers that they're writing require English submissions. And it has historically been, I mean, honestly, something that Castor specializes in, but quite difficult and a time-consuming process that takes multiple rounds of review, multiple review cycles to get from a deeply technical explanation to a, marketing-ready conference abstract or a, industry trade publication ready article that is technically accurate, readable, engaging, in the voice of the author, leverages their expertise. When you're starting from the perspective of somebody who's really just focused on engineering excellence, right? Like communications is not their area of focus and expertise. Engineering excellence is their area of focus and expertise. And now we have these tools and this actually connects directly back to some of the use cases that OpenAI is sharing, like this is how people are actually using this. We have these tools where we can have a quick 20-minute call with an engineer, conduct an interview, transcribe it, create an outline for a story, create a draft, and then have the AI assist us to be like, okay, have we reflected the technical accuracy perfectly here? Like, are we totally aligned with everything that the engineer told us about how this works? Do we have the context correct? Is there anything we're missing? Are there considerations that we're not thinking of? And it can help fill in those missing gaps that were lost in the human communication that honestly has reduced review cycles on pieces like this that start with a technical interview by a matter of weeks for me. It is just the most extraordinary accelerator for that kind of content production that allows us to put out more high quality technical pieces from a wider array of diverse voices. And I think that's just an add to the overall industry knowledge base and to how organizations are able to leverage the talented people within them in order to produce rich outreach.
And if I may add on to that as well, that goes into related but a different theme of even how companies can stand out in this AI age now, where customers use chatbots to identify companies to even work with in the first place. Like that goes into the whole GEO kind of conversation, which we can talk about later. But one thing that's very important to remember is now that everyone can use AI to create content, it's really, really critical to use this unique insight, that unique expertise that your company has, and get it out there, because that's then when the real differentiation happens. And that's when, even if users use AI tools or chatbots or search engines to do an analysis or comparison of companies. At the end of the day, they're referencing unique content. And if you're able to give a voice to those specialists, to those engineers, and do it more quickly and efficiently by using those ChatGPTs and tools, that's hugely valuable from a branding perspective as well, and discoverability and things like that.
That is so, I could not agree with that more.
Yeah, look, I think, and let's perhaps bring this to the every man and woman in the industry and so on. You know, we talk about this as this sort of master organizational brand building proposition, but in the last episode, we were talking about building your brand, your personal brand, and so on as well. And I think this can equally apply to building your own personal brand of what you post on LinkedIn and so on. Taking individuals that self-admittedly aren't strong at writing content and giving them a tool to get their persona, get their thought leadership and so on out that traditionally they never would have. And so I think there's a personal application to this that's just as strong as the corporate application to bring those stories out. In fact, they often merge, because in fact, those same echoes of individuals in your organization should be aligned to some of those broader stories and so on as well. So, I think, in fact, to take it one step further, I guess, Rachel, in the community platform in NEXXT Connect and so on, we're always looking for good content, and particularly not just from the boardroom and the senior execs, but from the front lines. And so to take it a further step, I actually built a custom GPT that would interview individuals. They just send me the transcript. I put it into another GPT that helps write the story and send it back to them. And now they've already got 90%, and they do that same process. And so of sort of, yes, final refinement and editing and so on. But in fact, that's literally down to a matter of days now to allow someone a programmer, an engineer, someone who may not be particularly comfortable telling their own story to be able to do that in a matter of days. And so I think that's such a transformational moment in brand building at whatever scale you want to make that.
Yeah, I think so recently the New York Times has been on the record as being a bit AI skeptical. They're literally suing OpenAI, but they too are starting to use these tools for exactly that kind of application use case. Like, there was a recent story about conspiracism in the wellness industry. And in order to build this story, they analyzed thousands of hours of video clips, which, in the past would have been unbelievably labor intensive to identify themes in conspiracism in wellness across the industry. And they built a custom AI to analyze the video clips for them, pull out the themes, and create a spreadsheet of, here are the videos that we found these themes in, here are the time codes. And then they still had a human fact checker go through and verify that, yes, those themes were actually discussed in this way in this video. But it saved them thousands of man hours in the production of this story, in the initial research process of identifying, like, what is actually out there and where can I look to find it. It would have been almost an impossible story to tell in nearly as comprehensive or holistic a way without that AI assistance. And especially when it comes to something like, reviewing video clips, there is no way for a human to do that faster other than just like putting it on 4X and grinding it out. But again, this is an area where like AI directly can massively accelerate the process and then enable a human to step in and apply that unique insight and lens to it.
But I think the exciting part of that is, as it is for so many other applications, is it just wouldn't have been feasible economically or otherwise to do it before. So our capacity to deliver a better outcome is just changed substantively by the tool that we've now got. So
yeah, perhaps adding a bit of a sharing of how that's kind of happening in our company too, because Rachel, as you were saying, it's possible to do so many things, but again, as with any new technology, there's first adopters, there's laggards, and so another thing that companies can look into is just building out perhaps an internal center of excellence, or some people who just help to bring the laggards along. And laggard is a bad word, but so people who might be struggling a little bit or might just not be so rapid to adopt. And we're doing that as well. So we've got sort of AI, how to say, well, we've got teams, we've got channels where we're just exchanging. Okay, how are you using it? How are you using it? Because a lot of it is also still exploration. And we've got people who are live on a call, are walking other people through their workflows. Like, all right, I want to create some content. Well, this is how I use ChatGPT. This is how I prompt it. This is what I enter to get the right tone of voice. And it's just knowledge sharing between individual people too, to help upskill everyone and help everyone get the most out of it. Or if I find suddenly a nifty little new trick or a prompt that works well for me, I can share that with that Teams channel and say, hey, this worked well for me. Why don't you try it?
Yeah, I think that kind of small steps adoption is the way to approach it. It's not even necessarily about bringing laggards along. It's about adopting AI strategically in ways that add value to your organization. Like I know that internally with Caster, we did a pilot with the sort of Teams Plus Copilot AI enabled rules. And it was just like dropped on everybody. Like, you have this now, use it and tell me how it's going in 2 weeks. And nobody used it. We had nothing to learn after 2 weeks and we canceled it. Then conversely, right now at my husband's company, he's a software engineer, and across their teams, they are trying out a new AI tool for code assistance. And there are specific people on specific tasks who have been assigned to try using AI alongside other engineers who are doing similar tasks on the same project for certain deliverables. And then at the end of a given period, they're going to share their specific experience with using the AI and be able to compare how their results compared to the engineers who are not using the same tool. And they're going to have really concrete learnings. They're going to have developed best practices that they can share with their team, and they're going to be able to make an assessment. Does this tool assist this type of work in this way or not? And that assessment is going to be different for different teams and different projects. So I think rather than just like blanket here, try it out, we're doing this now, taking a stepwise approach that treats each project and use case differently and has a structure built in for knowledge sharing and best practices, that's the way to start extracting value from AI for your organization, 100%.
Well, I think we tend to get caught in thinking of marketing as this external thing, but I think never more so than today is a role for marketing to play in terms of the internal marketing of within an organization of these change moments and so on. And again, it's not just about AI; it's about the stories of transformation and change. We know that resistance is inherent in the human condition, and how does that get overcome? It gets overcome with story and trust in others and so on. And so there's probably a whole separate episode on that premise of internal marketing and so on. But I think that role's definitely shifting as far as how we can take some of those same external principles of marketing and bring them back to the transformations within an organization. But we could probably talk for hours here, but I want to get to a particular topic I think that's really important, in part because it's the journey that customers travel to get to us, and then it's in part that story of now each of our individual roles to kind of reflect that moving forward. But we're seeing this shift where customers have, well, for the last decade or more since web, have been arriving more and more educated about our offering. It's the journey that you've brought them on before you've even spoken to them through digital marketing and so on. But AI has brought this new order of magnitude of the level of knowledge that a customer might have before they ever get to talking to a real human and so on. And so I'm interested in in what does that mean for a marketer, I guess, in being able to lay those seeds, because ultimately that's what your role has always been, to lay the seeds so that by the time you get to the front lines of your organization, that customer is built a perception, built a trust, and so on. And so, I guess if you look at the macro level of what your role as a marketer is, what is the real shift that's now occurred in terms of what you need to be aware of, I suppose, in the journey that a customer is likely to have traveled to get to you, and how does that reshape the stories and the engagement model once the customer does actually start to engage?
Marketing's role does not start at the point where the customer already comes to you educated. Marketing's role is already part of that education as well. Yes, a customer is using different tools now to form their opinions, and they are using generative search engines and whatnot to form their opinion. But marketing very much is still necessary to make sure that opinion is correct as well. And that's where it's the combination of all the different marketing functions that need to work together to make sure that when a customer forms their opinion, it's the right information as well that they're referencing. So that, again, refers to things like GEO, which we talked about. It refers to what we're doing on a PR standpoint, the reputation that exists out in the market. It's how we interact on forums, on social platforms, just anywhere where these agentic tools are pulling information from. And that's where marketing comes in as well. It's not only about pushing a fluffy message, it's just making sure that how the company communicates externally is consistent and making sure it's the right message, obviously, that you want to get out as well.
This is an area, it's like a small use case, but something that I find AI helpful in is as a quick, finger to the wind pulse check of how far am I from my overall messaging goals? With any client, we will look at what are our key messages? What do we want people to believe about our brand? What do we want the brand to be associated with? What do we think it's important for people to know about our industry? What do we think the leading problems are? And how do we want people to understand that we help solve those problems? These kinds of questions. And AI at the large language model AI, I should say, at its very foundation is a stochastic parrot. It is not coming up with new ideas. It is echoing the ideas that are in the ether. So if you want to understand in a very broad way what the internet thinks the best microphone to buy for podcasting is, you can get a really good pulse check by querying an AI model. Now, you kind of have to go about it in the right way, because if you're an AI user overall, it gets to know you and it really wants to please you. It's like a hopeful puppy, and across these models, it's been shown that over time, they will learn to develop answers that they think that their users want to hear. So, incognito mode is your friend here. In many of these models, like Claude, like ChatGPT, you have the opportunity to sort of turn the memory off and get sort of a clean answer. But sometimes I will use ChatGPT or another AI model or Perplexity, what have you, to just check my assumptions or my goals against the zeitgeist as measured by the LLM right now. And I think that that's just like a handy practice for any marketer to do. We have a lot of ways of measuring what messages are people seeing, what's sticking, what's leading to conversions. But this gives us a way of seeing what's out there really, really broadly. It's a shortcut to understanding the zeitgeist.
Well, yeah, as you said, you want to understand the status quo of, okay, where am I? When you start any new initiative or you go on an improvement plan, you need to know where you are right now to then get there. And I think there are a lot of tools out there that can help you. I mean, you can ask it yourself. All right, what is Shure? What does Shure stand for? And then you get that. But then there are more specific AI tools that you can then use also to pull up comparisons, or what are the perceptions of that brand versus the other. And you can use that as a marketer to inform the next steps. Okay, what do we need to do? If there is a reputational issue, okay, how do we tackle that? And like use it as a tool then for action items as well.
Yeah, I will often discover in this way like misconceptions, technical misconceptions about how something works. Oh, really? People believe that this protocol can't do this functionality. Well, that's wrong. And so clearly there's some storytelling we need to do about that. It can help surface communication that is necessary for you to undertake.
I just want to jump back. I wrote something recently about leading the witness, essentially, with AI. It's so easy to take your opinion and the way you voice it. If you're not careful, you'll just get you'll just get the reflection, the amplification of your perspective, and so on as well. But which I think is important to be conscious of, and then make those conscious decisions of what are you trying to achieve, and ask for the contrarian view and so on at times as well. Look, we're running short on time here, but I guess taking that broader lens, not just purely as a marketer, but looking at everyone's role in that sort of marketing piece. We had Richard Mulholland on a couple of months ago, and he sort of said that the hardest part of change isn't doing something new; it's stopping something old. And so I guess I'll ask sort of your both of your reflections here. What as either a broader corporate marketer or even as an individual marketer of your own brand, what should you stop doing because of AI, I guess, and then what's something that you should start doing, start thinking about, start preparing for in this moment? Any recommendations, I guess, in some sort of parting comments here?
I think for me personally, something that I try to remind myself of as well is to stop saying or stopping myself from doing something because we've always done it this way, or we've tried it before and it didn't work. Because if anything, a lot of new things are possible now, and a lot of things need to be done differently moving forward. So stop yourself in sort of working based on legacy, based on experience, on legacy ways of doing things. That's just probably the one thing that I'll try to keep in mind for myself as well.
I think I'm definitely kind of stealing from Ava a little bit here, but I would say if you're still putting a lot of your content production focus on like evergreen content that is SEO optimized, it might be time to stop doing that and to focus more on what Ava was calling out earlier about those like unique insights that only you can offer. That's key to GEO, and it's key to brand building. And I don't know if we ever defined this term that we've used like 18 times in this conversation, but GEO is generative search optimization as opposed to traditional search optimization. If you want things to be tied back to you, then it needs to be timely and unique. And that's how you get those direct connections to your brand and your site and those links back. Otherwise, you just become digested as part of overall general recommendations, which is not what you're aiming to do.
Yeah, I think that, I guess if I could make a recommendation specifically to the narrow marketers, that while it's still, Eva, I think you suggested it's probably only 1% or so of your search results that you're showing at the moment, but that GEO premise, as people are shifting, as we're seeing Google have to reinvent its own business model around search and so on, that generative search proposition is becoming more and more important. You were talking, Rachel, about the shifts of the trust that people are putting in LLMs now to help them find relevancy and so on. And so I think that's probably one area that, while it still may be relatively limited in practicality, that's an area that's really going to shift in the years to come. And I think we're at a point where the first 2 years perhaps was a period of us all sort of figuring things out and starting to build things in the workflows that sort of educated us to what the potential is. I'm really excited about the next 2 years of now that we have those foundations, now that these things start to come into R&D foundations, start to come into workflow foundations. What happens as we see that maturation, and we start to get some of the at least the early majority starting to really action and leverage some of these things. So, look, great conversation today. I wish we could keep going here, but and maybe we'll have to have you back for a future episode. But why don't you both share a little bit of where people can find you? And Rachel, I know you're often on other podcasts and prolific on LinkedIn with thoughts and so on at times as well. So share a little bit of where people can find you and indeed the Caster team and so on.
Byron, it's true. I just can't shut up. So you can find me primarily on LinkedIn. That's the best place. You can find me, or also find Caster Communications. That's where I wax poetic most prolifically. I also occasionally show up places like here, AV Week, Resi Week. I am the most absent member of the AV Super Friends, etc. But generally when I do those things, I post about them on LinkedIn. So find me on LinkedIn.
And Eva?
Same for me. Find me directly, organically on LinkedIn. And then obviously Shure on Shure.com. And at the next roadshow or event or any other way, because we're still humans. We're still are out there in the world as well, meeting face to face.
Excellent. Well, thank you both. Look, I think an important discussion as we travel the variety of applications across the industry, and I hope some good storylines that people could draw upon, some real practical realities in organizations and so on. So and that those things come down to the day-to-day realities of most of us, as opposed to just looking at marketing as a broader organizational responsibility. So thank you both, and thank you listeners for joining us. We'll look forward to seeing you on the next episode of The Next Question.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.